and welcome to the next installment of the CLE Sports PT and Performance webinar series. My name is Carol Mack. For those of you who have not joined into this before, today's more of what we call a lunchtime express version of this webinar, where we're trying to just hit a couple points in a short period of time so that you can all get back to your work and life and whatever else you pause to tune into this. So, all right, again, thank you for joining in. Let's see if I can, advance the slides here. There we go. The next one we'll be doing, so these are every other Thursday and then alternating Tuesdays. The next up is our sports performance coach webinar. It's going to be on Cinco de Mayo. We're talking about acceleration and deceleration and training that. And then our next webinar for athletes and for parents is going to be on May 10th, talking about agility training and the importance of that and how to do it. You can stay up to date on my website, on Instagram, or on Twitter. Just feel free to follow me on there, and I'll be announcing further webinars. So when we talk about individualized training, the goal here, a lot of people, a lot of you are part of a team or have a training program, or even if you're not part of a team, it's easy to pull up, any training plan that you can get online nowadays and start to follow it. And, whether it's a good plan or a okay plan, or, that's another discussion for another day. But what do you need to do individually on top of those things? So you've got the plan, you've got, generally what your coach is telling you. But again, what do you need to know to get better? What are your goals and things that you need to do on top of that, or modified? Sometimes it's not doing more, sometimes it's knowing when to do less. But what do you need? How do we make this personalized to you? So the bottom line, if you take one thing from this talk, is knowing your sport and knowing to do something called the needs analysis. And we're going to talk about how to do that. This needs analysis, this is what strength and conditioning coaches do. This is what sports performance coaches do when we work with athletes. I do it in the rehab world when I have to figure out how to prepare an athlete to get back onto playing and their level of competition. I do in the sports performance world when I'm working with athletes that are not injured and trying to prepare them for an upcoming season. So it starts to do this. The first step of that is to basically be objective. Understand where you're currently at and where you need to go. I've talked about this in past webinars. You can tune into those if you need to, talking about going from the floor to the ceiling, but be objective, get some numbers on where you're currently at and get some numbers on where you need to go. A needs analysis is basically where you go into a full comprehensive analysis of the sport's physiological and biomechanical requirements. And we'll talk about that. So what movements are required in your sport, being the biomechanics of that, and what physiology so what kind of fitness do you need? What kind of strength do you need? All of the things that are kind of wrapped up in that. So to do this, and a lot of times, your sport already. So this is, I think a lot of words saying something that you may already know already, but it's just trying to quantify it. Putting together sport specific, what kind of movements do you need to be able to do? Do you need to be able to jump higher to, get rebounds in basketball? Do you need to be, able to cut around corners quickly, or cut around a player very quickly to get to the ball quicker in soccer? What are those sport specific movements? Is it a golf swing? Are you trying to improve your golf game? There's a lot of biomechanics that go into play with that. You don't have to, you can see an expert to know what exactly, but just having a general idea of what things you need to do better movement wise to get better at your sport is where we start kind of making a plan for individual training. What kind of fitness do you need? We're going to talk about that in a second. Not all fitness is created equal for equal sports. What are the common injuries, or what are things that you would be at risk for having, in your sport, and how can we try to prevent some of those? And then again, what kind of strength, what kind of range of motion, what kind of flexibility? Not every sport needs a ton of flexibility. So, is our time better spent? Do we need to stretch all of certain muscles before we go to play? Or do we need to stretch the ones that are specific to our sport? Or do you need to stretch the ones that are specific to you because maybe you do have a little tighter hamstrings than the next person? whatever that is, just understanding what you need to be prepared for your sport and for your goals. And then again, that kind of goes along with what I just said, the athlete's individual factors. Something that we're going to kind of start with, we do our needs analysis and we kind of list out what we need, what we need to be at in our sport. And that's kind of the bottom of this, what we call the hierarchy of athletic development. I mentioned this in my webinar last week. I'm going to go into it again here. The bottom rung is kind of where is that athlete at and where do they need to get to? Then the next piece of this is we build the necessary fitness on top of that. The individualized fitness plan. Then we move up into strength, explosiveness. I'm going to go over each of these, reactivity and speed. And these are kind of each level builds on the one, the next one. So just for an example, and you don't need to know this, but this is a sample of needs analysis that I've done for soccer players. So the soccer player has to sprint every 90 seconds, and there's data out there about all sports. And so, this information is out there and able to find for whatever you need to prepare it for yourself. Soccer player has to sprint every 90 seconds. They have a very large total distance that accumulates a lot over the course of a game. And then there's 150 to 250, what we call brief intense actions, meaning that person is going to have a quick burst of speed to go sprint to a ball and win a ball, or go, have to recover and chase down another player to get a ball or whatever it is, per player each match. They have 111 times that they have to be doing something with a ball during a match, and that's being done in an explosive manner. So that's where you need to prepare an athlete to be able to do something near their max kind of power. And this is important for me when I have to work with people that are coming back from ACL injury. They have to plant and cut on their legs about on an average 726 times during a 90-minute soccer match. So I need to understand that and prepare an athlete to be able to do that repeatedly at power and at speed during a match. So for, you can even go position wise, sometimes, and this goes with other different sports. So understanding where you are in the field has different running that is required. Goalies run less than people who play in the center midfield. This could be different for anyone, in other sports. If you're looking at basketball, different positions on that, or the field or the court are going to be different. Football, definitely each position is very different. So just understanding, if you're a football player and you're a wide receiver, what you need to be doing is going to be a lot different than what an offensive lineman is going to be doing. And that's where a needs analysis comes into play. So when we talk about fitness along those lines, so the next rung up in that hierarchy that I mentioned earlier was fitness. And not all fitness is created equal. So we have sports that are, baseball, golf, long jumpers, people doing Olympic weightlifting, where they don't need to build the same fitness as someone who's running a marathon, who needs to build aerobic fitness. So there's kind of a continuum here. And the first part of this arrow, the beginning of this arrow, and I apologize, is meant to put, I was meant to change these, I had meant to change these words here to, there's anaerobic fitness, and then we kind of move into aerobic fitness. So anaerobic is where you don't need long, slow runs to build up for strength for. People that are doing Olympic weightlifting aren't probably going on 3-mile runs to build up the fitness to do that. They're doing other things. They're doing sets of 5 squats or sets of 5 power cleans or whatever it is, or barbell complexes that are going to get their heart rate up a little bit, but it's not as long duration as aerobic fitness. So you start to move kind of into this continuum of, if you think about what somebody who needs to swing a baseball bat does for fitness versus somebody who's a 400-meter runner, and then somebody who's a distance runner, there is a continuum there. If you play a team sport, it's a little bit more tricky, unfortunately. So basketball, lacrosse, soccer, field hockey, these team sports need to do something called repeated sprint ability. So what this is where you're doing maximal or sprints or near max. So maybe you're not going all out, like a 400-meter runner would need to go all out for their one event. because they have the whole rest of the day to recover. In the team sports like soccer or basketball, you're sprinting up and down a court or field. It's not all out, but it's close. It's probably up to, 80 to 90% of your maximum, but then you're having to jog back to recover. You don't get to stand, you don't get to sprint to the end of the field and then just stop and stand there and kind of catch your breath. You have these brief times of recovery. So that's a combination of aerobic and anaerobic fitness. How to build this is another topic for another time, but I just wanted to make you aware. So other things that we may need to do to build into our training plan to make it more individualized for you and for your needs are, maybe we do need to add more strength training in. Strength I did a webinar on this last week, so you can take a look for more detail there. But strength in its basic definition is the ability to produce force. If you're stronger, because it's that bottom foundation of that hierarchy, because of that, you're going to be better off. You're better able to jump, better able to sprint, better able to really perform. It is that foundation. We measure this. Again, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because there's another video up on my YouTube channel that mentions this if you want to check it out. Their strength is either measured with a 1 rep max testing, meaning how much can you lift for 1 repetition, or there are new methods. We're using force plates that are very exciting because they're a lot easier to test this and don't require as much they're not as taxing physically to do that. Again, this is the isometric mid-thigh pull. Again, whether you can have this done with force plates, it's something that I do with force plates with my athletes. I'm happy to answer any questions, outside of this webinar on it, or again, taking a look at previous ones. We train strength with multiple multiple sets and reps of exercises. And if not, that's not possible. 1 set to fatigue is sometimes, it's not ideal, but it's something that at least can build some strength. And we want to lift intensely if we can, if it's safe to, if you're able to do it with right form, if you're able to build up to that, it's something that probably should be guided under an expert, but just understanding that you want to be as intense with your strength training to get results. You don't want to just kind of go through the motions and not really get much out of it. Moving on to the next step up the ladder is explosiveness. So this is how you to produce your strength quickly. So you have strength, but you need to generate it quickly. So during fast movement, so if you need to go grab and block a shot and jump up very quickly, to do that, that's explosiveness. How explosive are you getting out of the blocks when you're running a 100-meter dash? The quicker people out of the blocks are going to be, have a better chance of winning the race. You want to explode out of the blocks. That's explosiveness. It's also known as power. I think a lot of people probably know it better as power, and that's fine. However your definition or however the word is, it's the same definition. It's called a critical aspect of success in many sports, and for good reason, because it's the strength, but it's how you express that strength. Like I just said, it's how fast can you generate that force during a movement. And there's different times. So the amount of time a person doing a basketball layup has to be, plant their foot on the ground and push up and try to make that layup is going to be different from a sprinter, different sports. Again, I went into that last week. It can be measured, strength and explosiveness can be measured by something called the dynamic strength index, where this kind of tells the athlete where they should focus their training. And it's a way that we can test. Again, I want to go into a ton of detail for time's sake here, but you basically are taking a look at the strength test from this isometric mid-thigh pull here, doing this test here, and just pulling up on the bar and seeing how much force is generated there, to jumping on a force plate and looking at vertical jump there and comparing the two. Other things to do that will kind of close with other aspects of training that can be beneficial to somebody they might want to add in is agility testing. So it's how quick are you? So there's that explosiveness of how fast can you generate your strength, but then how quick are you in terms of, can you get to another side of the court or field quickly and stop and change direction and get to another position when the play changes, to another point of the field. The type of cut or the how to change direction is sport specific. That's where your needs analysis comes into play. Think of a tennis player, how they need to get back and forth on a court is a little bit different than a basketball player that is going to have to, pivot completely and maybe face completely opposite direction at certain points. So understanding that is very important. There's drills you could do, like this is a T drill that we use a lot with certain sports where you're sprinting to a cone and side shuffling back and forth and backpedaling. This can be adapted to make it even more individualized. Or a 5-10-5 drill. This has been used in football. We've used it in soccer to work on training that way. And then the last component is speed. So we can do all of these things, but then also there's speed. And there's two components of speed. It's how fast you can accelerate. So that's the explosiveness. That's why you need the bottom foundation on that hierarchy that I mentioned. And then there's how fast can you get to that max speed. And the goal is you want to accelerate and be explosive as you can to get to that max speed. And you want that max speed to be faster than the other person that you're trying to compete against. This is done in both ways. It's going to be probably another subject for another time, but understanding that there's two ways to train speed, either training in the horizontal plane, so doing things like bounding and kettlebell swings, that kind of thing, but then also vertical, the picture. So doing things like back squats and box jumps where you're applying a vertical force to the ground, that can help also develop speed. Again, that will be another topic for another time, so just stay tuned for that. But for those of you who have been part of this, I appreciate you hanging on here, and I'll stick around for questions. But in the meantime, if anyone, we'll end this here so that way you can all get back to the rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in.